I'm Rose Cushing, host of Carolina Hoofbeats TV, and we're in Willard, North Carolina today with Jewel Horton. And Jewel is the founder and the director of Horton's Rehab Ranch. And the reason that we came to see Jewel today is not only to talk about her wonderful rehab ranch, but Jewel's kind of our local expert on hurricane preparedness. And since we're kind of neck deep in the season now, I've asked Jewel to give us a crash reminder course on what we need to do to be ready. So Jewel, take it away.
Oh my goodness. Well, as we know, in North Carolina, we are no strangers to disasters, and in particularly severe weather, and especially hurricanes. And 2020 is definitely showing us its ugly face when it comes to that. So this is Peanut, and Peanut is actually one of our personal horses that we've had for pushing 20 years. So he's no stranger to disasters either. And he's going to be our cover model today about ways to help identify your horses during disasters. And this is kind of a pet peeve of mine because we do field response after disasters. We did it privately before I went to work for the Pender County Animal Shelter during Hurricane Floyd, which was here in '99, which was a massive hurricane with widespread damage. And then we also went to Florida for Hurricane Charlie, and then we went to Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. And one thing that we saw time and time again was animals that were not properly identified. And so we had a very hard time reuniting animals with their owners. And then something people don't think about is when you do find your animal, you have to prove it's your animal. And when you've lost everything you own, you know, especially as a government facility, we can't just take your word for it. We have laws we have to follow that prove this is your animal. So these are just going to be a few tips. One thing we have here are livestock tags, and I'll show you the packaging for this. You can pick these up really cheap. I actually ran in Tractor Supply this morning and bought this because I was out. They are maybe 20 bucks. These are not the medicated ones. I don't do the medicated ones because I am not an expert on cattle medicated tags. So if you want to do medicated ones, you need to talk to your vet. Super cheap. You can also buy the marking pen with this for like 6 bucks. They have a wide tip and a short tip, a fine tip. I use the fine tip. And so on this one, it shows his name, our phone numbers, and our names. We included our veterinarian's contact information. We also have our website. Obviously, everyone doesn't have a website, but you could put your email address. And then we write on here that he is microchipped, because obviously if you scan his microchip, there's also additional information there. And the microchip also is permanent proof of ownership, because anyone can slap a tag on this horse and say it's theirs. So as far as the government side, this would not prove he is my horse. But anyone who finds him walking down the street after the disaster could go, oh, well, this is Peanut. And if they're scared of horses, they can see from a far distance. They could call me and be like, hey, I'm on the side of Shiloh Road and I found a horse with a tag that says Peanut. You know, your horse is loose. And we can get the ball rolling. And so in my pocket, I have shown on one of my other rescue horses, Rocket, his tag is a little different. I have written on his tag in asterisks, it says medical. So this is a little different because Rocket has a medical need and it has an arrow. So if you flip his tag on the back, it states that he is HYPPNH. Now, why is this important? Rocket has special dietary needs. He cannot eat certain diets. So if someone was to collect Rocket and take him to an evacuation center, they could easily speak to the veterinarian in charge, or, you know, become an internet god and Google and see that Rocket couldn't eat special diets. That's really important. So if your horse has medical needs, or either your dog or your cat, or however you want to do this, super easy, cheap way to ID this and also put medical alerts on your livestock.
The rural American lifestyle. It's how we work, and it's how we play. It's how we learn and how we enjoy the finer things in life. How we take care of our animals and tend to the land. It's a way of life. Has been for hundreds of years. Now there's a whole new way for rural America to watch TV.
The other thing that Peanut has that we discovered actually at one of Rose's expos last year were these really neat leg bands. And you can order these online, and I'll show you a close-up in a little bit where you can order them. But they Velcro to their legs, and it has our phone number embroidered on it. They do not fall off. I left this on for a really long time last year when I bought them just to test it. Peanut here is the king of removing things. He can take off fly masks, he can take off halters. He did not get the leg band off. And if you really have a Houdini, you can put it on a back leg, so they're even less likely to remove it. This was also relatively inexpensive. They come in a couple of different bright neon colors. You can do other things besides your phone number, but the phone number was super easy. Again, if you have someone who is scared of your horse that doesn't want to walk up and catch it, they can stand back from afar, kind of get that phone number and contact you as well. So big fan of this also. And guys, this is also a great thing to use if you're just hauling your animal, because let's face it, things like microchips and ID bands don't just have to happen for disasters. You could have a trailer accident and your animal escape. So that's, that's another tangent for another day. My other big soapbox is microchipping. I believe every animal should be microchipped. So this is my microchip scanner. And I don't know if you can zoom in on this or if you want me to walk up a little bit, which is better. Okay. So, yeah, if you want to hold him, he's fine.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of him.
Oh, no, he's a good boy. So most horses are microchipped right up here. There's a ligament that runs here, and they're usually microchipped on the left side. So we'll cut on our little handy-dandy scanner, and he's been microchipped since he was wee teeny. So when we find animals, especially as a government facility, we're required to scan all of them. And there's his microchip number. So the way this works is if we get a microchipped animal, there's a database online where we can type this in, and it'll tell us what type of microchip this is. And then we can call the company, and the company says, well, this is Peanut, and Peanut belongs to Hugh and Jewel Horton, and they'll give us all the contact information, phone numbers, emails, physical address. We can add emergency contacts. Now, why this doesn't work is if I implanted Peanut 19 years ago and I don't update my information. That is a real sad thing, because we do see that a lot, where people implant their pets when they're puppies and kittens or fillies and colts, and then they never update their information. This is where this stops. Now, I'm crazy, and I will stalk you. I will hunt you down on Facebook, your tax records, like I am, I'm nuts. But some places are not that nuts, and they won't try that hard, and they'll rehome your pet. So make sure if you do the microchip route, which is the best route, because, a very special person is going to dig your microchip out of your pet's your neck or their body, but most people are not. This is a great way to prove ownership. Relatively inexpensive, has to be done by a veterinarian. I think you can order kits online and do yourself. Be careful with that, because the ones that your vets do are high quality. They're very traceable. When we call, we can trace back to the place that they were sold or implanted by, so that gives us more ability to track you down if for some reason your information isn't current. But like when you buy these things from Joe Blow internet site, there are a lot of dead ends there, so I can't find you if something goes wrong. Other things that are out there that we see are the livestock markers, and I've got examples of that over there where you can write on them with the great big bright colored markers with your phone number and stuff. Those work okay. What we do find is in real deep water, and especially when there's chemicals involved, sometimes those wash away, so that's not quite as good. Actually, my husband has brought me an example of that. So these are the livestock markers, super cheap, like maybe $6. So if you're looking for something that's low budget and you don't want to stab your animal, this is good. But again, if you're real worried about deep water, especially when we're talking about gasoline and toxins and fertilizers, these will wash away. Some people like to take Sharpie markers and write on the hooves with their contact information. I don't care if you do all of this. I'm crazy, go for it. Again, if they end up in water that has some type of contaminant, that's going to wash away. So not as permanent, but again, if you want to do all of the above, go for it. The tags, I've seen people do it in the manes, I've seen people do it in the tails. Obviously, we don't want to encourage people to walk behind your horse, so don't make that the only spot you put the tag. But if you want to put in the mane, in the tail, in the halter, in lots of places to make it very visible, because if you have a horse that is one of those hard to catch horses and it's going to constantly walk away from people, maybe braiding it in the tail so they're catching it as it walks away is a good idea. We get a lot of questions about halters and not halters. So obviously halters can cause problems if they get tangled up in something. So if you have to leave a halter on a horse, breakaway halters are a really good option. Breakaway halters usually have an extra piece here that is a thin leather strap that if they did get entangled, it will snap away in a panic and the whole halter falls off. And so then your horse is basically halterless and they can't become entrapped and break their neck or drown or whatever. So, you know, when it comes to being haltered or unhaltered, obviously unhaltered is usually considered the safest. But if you are having to leave your animals behind and you do have a hard to catch animal and you think it's going to be something where a rescue team like ours is going to have to come in and get them after the fact, and you're like, you know, they're never going to catch them without a halter, invest in the breakaway halter. Never, ever, ever leave rope halters on your horses. They can die with those very easily. We also get the question on in versus out. Do we leave them in the barn? Do we leave them in the field? You know, that is a very personal question. I can tell you that in our personal experiences and what we have seen over the years, we never leave ours confined. You know, when we were in, I believe it was Mississippi after Katrina, the number one injury we saw on horses coming in were crush injuries where the barns collapsed on the horses and they had major, you know, back and spinal injuries, impalement injuries from where the boards impaled them and injured them. Lots of horses died in barns because they collapsed on them. You know, in the field, do horses get injured in the field? Yes, they can, but most of the time they will run, they will evade. I have seen horses, when the pressure drops real low, when the wind gets real high, they actually lay down, lay flat, where things just blow over top of them. They have a lot of natural instinct for this. However, if you have a extremely sensitive horse, a very high flight horse that you think is going to like run through all your fences, it's homicidal, suicidal, like, I mean, you know your animal. You have to make that judgment call. You know your animal best. But, you know, just recognize that in these storms, there's a lot of unpredictability, a lot of variables, and tornadoes are a very big threat. And, you know, let's just face it, it is weather, and tornadoes are unpredictable, and most of our barns can't handle what a tornado is going to throw at it. And lightning and fires, that's the other part of this. There's very few barns that are fireproof. I mean, there's a couple out there that claim to be, but for me, it's a no. Mine go out with all of the identification. We make sure that our fences are good and secure. We make sure that there's tons and tons of backup water in case you're without powers for days. And, you know, we give it to God and hope for the best. I mean, I think that, you know, when we have to go out and do recovery afterwards, there's no judgment. I mean, I feel like until you've walked a mile in some of these people's shoes, none of us have a right to judge anybody. Another soapbox of mine is loading. So we constantly see with disasters, people either don't have trailers or their horses don't load. You know, they are very big animals. The time to learn to load is not 2 days before the hurricane hits. You are stressed, your animal is stressed. It is a very dangerous time to try to impress that upon your animal. So now is the time, people. Now is the time to borrow a trailer, rent a trailer, make friends with your neighbors down the road that have horses. Make a plan. Hey, we don't know each other. I see you have horses. Where do you evacuate? Know where to go. I mean, in North Carolina, we see storms. A lot of people assume that the state is going to let you evacuate to state facilities. That has not been the case. You need an individualized plan. Know where you can go. Make friends. There are great Facebook groups that open up during these disasters. I think it's called East Coast Fleet of Angels. They go wide open with people that will help with transport, people that will help with housing. But, you know, you need to have money set aside to help with fuel, money set aside to help with, you know, shavings and feed and hay. And, you know, not everybody charges you for this, but have a little grace and kick a little money back because people are opening their homes to you. And that goes a long way. But talk to your neighbors. You know, where do you go? Would they have room for one or two more? Can we practice loading? Let your horses get to know each other. I can't tell you how many times in Matthew we'd go to evacuate horses and we'd go to put a horse on the trailer that had never seen a mini donkey, and it was a crisis. They're like, what is this? It's the devil. So we're out here in the middle of floodwaters trying to let these animals get to know each other so they can load on a trailer together so we can save lives and not have to make multiple trips because certain species don't like one another. So practice this. If you need help, talk to your local ag agent, see if there's, people in your community that can help with training and help with loading. Talk to your local animal control agencies. They may have evacuation assistance or know of local barns that are maybe a little further inland or a little higher ground that don't have flooding issues that are willing to help. Don't assume no one's there, because assuming is the worst thing you can do with any disaster. Assuming you're okay, assuming no one cares, assuming no one's going to help, because we all know what assuming means, and I'm not going to get into that on camera. The other thing that you need to think about is your Coggins. Sometimes they do waive Coggins tests and disasters, sometimes they don't. It is also up to the individual facility as to whether or not they're going to let you come in without a Coggins. So, it's $20, $30, $40 for a Coggins. Do it at the beginning of the year in the spring and have it. It's just a nice thing to do. Another thing to think about on that Coggins is if you spend the extra money and do the one with the photographs, that's a great form of proof of ownership. And guess what? Have it digitally sent to you. That way it's in your email account. So that way if you lose your permanent record and you have to go claim your horse, be like, hey man, can I log into my email real quick on your computer because my digital Coggins is in there and that proves he's mine. Super simple, because let's face it, in a panic, your car washes away, all your belongings wash away, your email is a digital record. You can get it from anybody's phone, anybody's email, anybody's computer. These are things to think about. Vaccines. What do hurricanes bring? Water. What do water bring? Mosquitoes. We have seen a lot of Triple E this year. Hurricanes blow in the water, hurricanes blow in the mosquitoes. Make sure your animals are vaccinated. Triple E is a very deadly disease in horses, and the vaccine is relatively inexpensive. And when you do it through your veterinarian, most of the time that vaccine comes with a guarantee that will help with the treatment or the loss of your horse. Same thing with West Nile. And the same thing again, if you are evacuating to a private facility, those facilities may require that your horse be current on vaccines. So don't skimp there either. And I'll show you an example in one of our books. We keep a spiral binder with individual pages, and it has the Coggins, it has their microchip information, and it has their vaccine records, so that we can just roll in and go, boom, proof of ownership, proof of vaccine, Coggins. So if we did have to evacuate, we can rock and roll, and we're not scrambling to find this stuff. The other thing we really like is really detailed feed charts, because if you did have to evacuate with your animal, sometimes things happen and you get separated from your pet, and in these evacuation centers someone might have to feed for you. So we like color feed charts. It has a photo of the animal, what their individual feeding schedule is, and any medical needs. So like on the Rocket horse, it says he's HYPPNH, he can only have these feeds, and it has his color photo, and so it makes it very thorough and very easy so people can't mix that up. Having at least a week's worth of feed if you evacuate with you is a good idea. If it's a big storm, you may want a couple weeks. I mean, here for Florence in Pender County, we were actually cut off from the entire state for almost 3 weeks. And so if you weren't ready for that and you had a special needs animal, you could have really been in a bind.
And that's something we thought couldn't happen, and it did.
It was a really eerie feeling.
It was.
To the only way we could get supplies in was either by helicopter or if someone met you on the other side of the river and boated it across. And so, here we are in 2018 in modern times, and it's, you feel like you're rocking in the old days. Like, what is this? We can't run across the river into New Hanover County and go to the big stores, to the big chains, and get the stuff we need. And it was crazy. Have a medical kit, have your bandage material. Talk to your vet about having a shot of Banamine, some bute, some eyes. In hurricanes, you have a lot of flying debris. You can get dust particles, wood chips, shavings, impalements. So having eye flush is a really good idea. And you just get regular people eye flush, the saline solution, so you can spray their eyes out. Another great trick is having syringes, just like you give vaccines with. You draw up the saline solution and you break the needle off, so you have a very hard, firm stream, and you can spray in here and get really accurate direction where you want to flush. And that helps. If you have an eye injury and you can't get the vet out right away, having a fly mask to try to protect that area is a good idea. I've even seen people use bras where they cut off one cup and leave the other to kind of protect that eye. And you got to kind of think outside the box because sometimes help isn't readily available. So having that little go kit ready to go with you or pack it and take it with you is a great idea. And there are so many websites out there that we'll be happy to share, and you guys can post and share as well. You can buy kits. The company that makes these little ID bands has fabulous first aid kits that are ready to go because you just don't know what you're going to encounter.
Hey, I'm Rose Cushing, host of Carolina Hoofbeats TV. With me is Teresa Spencer from EquestraSafe. And Teresa was gracious enough to come down to the expo this weekend and talk to us a little bit about safety, such as hurricane prep, barn fires, wind events. So I'm going to let Teresa tell you a little bit about what you missed.
Thanks, Rose. And I really appreciate you having us here. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. We talked about hurricane preparedness, and it was absolutely fabulous to have people come to that talk and learn about preparedness and what needs to happen today. The 10 things that you can do today to get yourself ready so you're not scurrying around and frantic and then you forget something. Then we talked about barn fires too, which, heaven forbid, everybody's had one. In fact, I heard one of the clinicians say they had one 2.5 years ago and lost 25 years worth of tack and collections and all of that. So it's really nice to have people aware of what's going on and to come and learn how they can prevent their barn from burning down and be a lot more safe. And then we talked about the wind events. Oh my gosh, tornadoes and hurricanes. People were appalled at some of the pictures that I showed, which was terrible. I mean, I hate to show pictures like that, but I think the shock value, unfortunately, is something that everybody needs to see. You're going to see things on the news, but you're not going to see the things that I showed them this weekend. Right. And really, if we are not prepared as animal owners and equestrians and horse owners, shame on you. I'm sorry to say that, but shame on you. You really need to prepare yourself, your farm, and if you can, help your community out as well, because it's a great thing to do for everybody. And to be able to share with people our identification products, the several products that we do produce ourselves and other products that we have, was wonderful. And the reception from people here in North Carolina and those that showed up here to the expo, which was great, was absolutely exciting to me to know that people have either been aware of us, and if they haven't been aware of us, that they became aware of us and now want to share with their friends and other people in their community. So we really appreciate you having us here and the ability to have us speak about all the issues that I see across the country, from wildfires to flooding, hurricanes and tornadoes, and everybody thinks they don't need what we have until they absolutely do need what we have. And then they're shocked, to find out that, gosh, it's really that easy.
I know, and we all think it's not going to happen to us, but it can happen to all of us, and
yes.
And it will.
Yes, it will happen to all of us. It's never the question of when or if. It's never the question of if. It's the question of when it's going to happen, and it will happen to you. I hate to say it, it will happen.
Absolutely. And with 2 or 3 hurricanes out in the Atlantic right now, or storms getting ready to
yes.
be hurricanes, pay attention, listen to this stuff, look her up, read her stuff, and get involved with getting yourself ready.
Again, it's Teresa with EquestraSafe, and our website is www.equestrasafe, just like my shirt says, .com. And we look forward to helping you out in any way you can. And if you ever have a question, you can always email us. You can also phone call us. We've got our phone number on there, and we'll be more than happy to give you some best solutions that you can do today to get prepared.
Very good. Thank you for coming this weekend
You're
and spending
welcome.
time with us.
Thank you. And again, thank you for having me.
As we mentioned before, examples of identification. I just wanted to go into a little deeper. So when we talked about the ID tags, this is what the livestock tags look like. And like I said, you can pick those up at any of your local livestock stores. I got these at Tractor Supply this morning, and this is what the pen looks like. And it has a fine tip and a broad tip. And so just to kind of show you, that's what the broad tip looked like, and it's a little hard to read. So I would definitely go with the fine tip. And then I just tied that into his mane with a piece of twine. And some people actually put an extra hole at the bottom so it doesn't flap and it doesn't get twisted around. So that's, you know, something you can do as well. And then we talked about the microchip. And again, your microchips are really small, and they're literally the size of a grain of rice. And it goes right in the crest of the neck, and there's a ligament there. I really, really recommend that you let your veterinarian do this. I do not recommend that you do this yourself, only because if you don't implant it in the right place, people can't find it. And again, the veterinarians, the ones they use, are usually of a high quality that we can do extra tracing with, and they're very easy. Again, they scan right up, and we can trace them. And your animal shelters, especially in North Carolina, are required by law to scan every animal that comes in. So all the animal shelters, animal control agencies have scanners that can read those chips.
There'd be nothing worse than buying that cheap from China and get them implanted, and then the thing don't
And
work.
they're not traceable, and we find those. I mean, we do. We find those that are absolutely worthless that we can't do anything with. And then we talked about, this was his ankle bracelet that we talked about before, and the company information's on here, and I'll give you the contact info as well. And they literally just Velcro on, so super safe. I mean, if he really got in trouble and got tangled, he could pull that off if he had to. But again, I made him test dummy wear it for like a month. He didn't pull it off. The other horses didn't pull it off of him. He didn't get hung in anything. I think they come in pink, lime green, and a really bright fluorescent orange. So these were really cool. And then we talked about your records. And so with that, I have a 3-ring binder. And basically when you open it, it has my horse's individual records. So I have my microchip information in there because that is my unequivocal proof that nobody can doctor that they belong to me. And they can call into a national database and verify it in minutes, 24/7, 365 days a year. And then I have my microchip information, so like the vets can print out a certificate showing that, you know, he's mine as well. And then you flip over and they have their Coggins information right there. So these are your older Coggins where we have the hand-drawn photos. So can be used as proof, but depending on how dedicated your veterinarian is, if you have a heavily spotted horse like some of mine are, some of your agencies may not love this. So then we go to our more modern Coggins that have the photographs. These are fabulous because they're 100% authentic photographs. Your information's here, they're date stamped. This would be proof of ownership with our agency for claiming your animal. And because they're digital, the vets will email them to you, so you have access to them anywhere. So we really like this. And then in my book, I also have photocopies of the registration papers. That's more proof of ownership. I will tell you though, in ownership disputes, registration papers are not solid because a lot of them don't have current photos. If you have breeds like Appaloosas and Paints where their colors and markings change, it becomes questionable. I always go back to microchipping. Some other things that, you know, for proof of ownership and ownership, you know, confirmation, we talk about freeze branding and tattooing. Those also really only work if they correspond with something else like your Coggins or some other official documentation, because none of us agencies have any type of database that we can revert back to that verifies that brand or that tattoo. Because in the middle of a disaster on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we can't call anywhere and verify the brand or the tattoo. So that's not foolproof. It's good backup, but it's not foolproof. Another thing that my husband mentioned, you know, if you're in a real jam, you can take clippers and you can shave your contact information into the side of your animal. I mean, if you're really in a bind and that's all you've got, that's not a terrible idea. But again, that can be altered. Somebody could shave over. So, you know, again, for proof of ownership, not going to work, but, you know, for something that you want to use in the beginning of a storm, not a bad idea at all. And then something that Rose mentioned that I had kind of forgotten about, or probably mentally blocked because it's a sore subject for me. We do see, unfortunately, with these storms, people that like to steal animals. So again, permanent identification like microchipping, a very good idea with this, because if your animal shows up at a shelter, if your animal shows up on some other rescue's Facebook page and you want to dispute this, that microchip may be your only chance of getting your pet back. Again, these are just some examples. There is other stuff out there. We're not saying that these are the best. We just say this is what has worked really well for us and what we have seen in the field that worked really efficiently and quickly. But again, remember things like the livestock markers and drawing. Anything that you use that you draw on your animal can wash away, especially in flood situations because of the unknown toxins in the water. So don't make this your only method. You know, having everything that you need for your animal digitally scanned and sent to yourself, have that backup. Because if you are in your car and something happens to your vehicle, your hotel room gets broken into, I mean, things happen. This can disappear. It can be stolen, it can be damaged by water, it could sucked up in a tornado. You want this backed up somewhere where you have access to it. So having that electronically scanned is a great idea. That way you've got it. You can reprint it again if you need it, or if you need to use it for proof, it's at your fingertips. Or if you're like, hey, can I borrow your iPhone real quick? You can log into anybody else's digital device and use this. I also have a copy of a feed chart, which this is an old one, but just a good example. So we have their picture, and then any medical condition, and then what they get and the quantity, and we do it by weight. We don't say a scoop, because my scoop is different from your scoop, is different from somebody else's scoop, you know. So go by weight so that it's very accurate. And you know, you probably think, God, this girl's nuts, but this really does help. You know, and one of the evacuation centers we were in after Katrina, you know, this was really helpful because they have hundreds of volunteers and people changing out shifts every 3 to 5 days to prevent fatigue and burnout. This was a really great way for them to make sure that nobody messed anything up, and especially animals that had special needs.